Hi guys, this is Dom, and on this video I'm going to give you a more in-depth look into our new synthesizer, RAST-A. RAST-A is a very powerful synth with a very distinct sound and character that can faithfully emulate those classic polysynth analog sounds of the 80s. Today I'm going to show you how you can create sounds from scratch using the really cool features that are under the hood of this beautiful synth. Right, so the best way to start with RAST-A if you want to create your own sounds is to go to your preset browser right here, and here you can select Initial RAST-A, which means that we'll get an initialized sound. So just one oscillator. So from here on, I can start creating my own sound. Now, the other thing I want to do, just because I like having those sections pop out a little bit more, I'm going to turn the oscillators into black, the LFOs into green, my filters, I'm gonna color this section red, the envelopes yellow, and the control, maybe I'm gonna leave it blue. So now I can start creating my sounds. Of course, you don't have to do this, but I like creating my own template on RAST-A. So right now I'm listening to only oscillator 1. And of course I can change the frequency of this oscillator. So if I wanted to create a bass sound, I would probably leave it at -1. I also have a pulse wave right here, which is really thick. It has nice low end. And now I can also change the pulse width right here. So you might find a nice sweet spot where it sounds really thick, especially if you're going for a bass sound. Now, of course, if I want, I can introduce the second oscillator, so maybe I can just turn it on like this. Let's turn it into pulse. Now, if you want to listen to the second oscillator in isolation, you can just turn off oscillator 1 right here. Let's go one octave higher for oscillator 2. And you can immediately hear that the drift is on. Let me go to the panel and let's go to our voice detune. And you can see the drift is on. When I turn it off, the sound becomes more alive. Without it, it's a little bit more static. You know, this sounds way more like an analog synth. So, moving on, we can also add ring modulation. So this can allow you to create some nice effects. We can also sync the oscillators. And now maybe I want to go to my filters, and these filters are really special. They are carefully crafted so that they come super close to these analog synth of the 80s. So let me show you. Let's add some resonance. So when you add more resonance, you get a very different character. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to immediately go and map those parameters, frequency and resonance, to my MIDI controller right here. It's just as easy as going learn CC, move the control, learn CC for resonance, move the control. So now, so you can immediately tell the sound is so thick. Great for bass sounds. So why don't we try and utilize the filter envelope to create a bass sound? So in order to utilize this filter envelope, what I can do is I can up the modulation right here. So we already have a bass sound like this. So let's open the decay a little bit. Nice. So let's try and send just 50% of the oscillator to the filter. So full gives us a thicker sound, but maybe you want to use half of it for, you know, a slightly more delicate sound, maybe a pad or something like this. This is also a very useful feature like that. Let's add some more resonance. So, you know, the resonance all the way up has a very distinct character. Check it out. Of course, I'm going a little bit too far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to more parameter and turn down the level a little bit, like this. So I can compensate for this, you know, gain that the resonance parameter gives me like that. You know, it's so much fun playing with this filter. I love it. Nice. So now, what else can we do? Let's turn this into Unison mode. So now all 6 voices are going to be stacked together, and we're going to talk about the voices later on even more. But let's stack those voices together with the Unison mode. Let's open the attack. Let's create a nice wobble. So this is with Unison mode off. Of course, with Unison mode, my sound becomes monophonic, which is great for leads. Let's up the sustain and create a lead sound. In a nice kind of funky. See this thickness, this low end, I love it. Now, why don't we try and give a little bit of movement to the sound? I'm going to add a little bit of LFO. So, let's say I want to add a bit of a sine wave LFO to oscillator 1. Maybe oscillator 2 as well. So of course, if I want to have control over the LFO depth, I can use my mode wheel for this. So now maybe I just want my pitch bend to only give me 1 full tone interval. So maybe the broad, which goes 1 octave higher, doesn't work for me. If I want to play some funky licks right here, so maybe I want to turn it off. Now, why don't we try and modulate the pulse width with the LFO? And maybe I want to add a little bit of delay. So let's go to delay and turn it on. And of course, if I want to, I can turn the legato on. So it won't re-trigger the filter. I can even turn on the velocity sensitivity for the filter. So the harder I hit the keys, the more the filter opens. Okay, so now let's try and change the sound a little bit. So I'm going to turn off Unison, so I'm going to go back to polyphonic mode, so now I can go. And I'm going to turn down this resonance. And all of a sudden, I'm into a brass sound. That's the beauty of RAST-A. You know, you can change a couple of controls and you are going into a completely different sound. You know, it's very easy to create sounds. Sometimes you might sit there, tweak a little bit, and come up with 4, 5, 6 sounds in like 15 minutes. It's really amazing. So now we have a brass sound. Now maybe for this sound, the pitch bender will work. And let's try the broad function now. But the cool thing is I can even say I want the pitch bender to affect only oscillator 2. So I'm going to activate this, and this will also give me a very typical kind of 80s effect on this sound. Check it out. Because only oscillator 2 gets pitched up. So now let's try something else. Now I want to go and tweak those parameters right here in the panel. So I'm going to go to voice detune, okay? And this is where we can have control over all those cool things in RAST-A. For example, VCO variation, filter trim, envelope, portamento, all those things. So I'm going to play one single note. And just to give you a very, very clear idea, I'm going to turn off the delay so that the sound is completely dry. Okay, so let's go back to voice detune and now I'm going to turn up the VCO detuning. So that means that those different voices are going to be detuned in a very natural way, in the way that analog polyphonic synths are detuned sometimes. Let me exaggerate a little bit. That's too much. You don't want to go that far unless you want some really, really weird effects, but you can fine-tune it exactly how you want it. So this doesn't sound like a digital synth anymore. This has variation. This is alive. You know, the oscillators drift, and we also have the drift parameter on right there. So you get a very, very, you know, unique note for every key you play. And you know, every time you play a key, it's going to be different. That's exactly what we're looking for on those old analog synths. That's why we love them and that's why we keep them. This recreates this feeling. So the same thing we can do with filters. So this will create a variation on the filter for every voice. See, some notes are a little bit more, have a little bit more open cutoff. Some notes have a little bit of a darker sound. Again, you know, variety, unexpected sound. And again, I'm exaggerating right here, but if you just try and fine-tune this, you will get a very, very rich sound. Then, of course, I can do the same for the envelope, so this will affect the envelope. Let me go all the way up. See, it's a bit of a variation there. And then, of course, we have my favorite one, which is the pan. And this basically makes a sound ultra wide. Let me show you. Let me play a chord. Now let's turn it all the way up. Check it out. It's incredible. It's super wide. Compared to this, okay? Still wide, but then if you turn it up, and you can even turn up the octave. Now pair this with this magical reverb that we have in RAST-A, and you're into, 80s polysynth heaven. Let me turn it up and show you. Let's turn up the release so that we get more of a pad sound here, like that. So let's try this. See how lush this sounds. Let's turn off all the oscillators and just leave the noise. So great for nice washes, Let's go full. So let's bring the oscillators back. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to show you now the pan trim. This is basically where you decide how much you trim the panning of all the different voices. So of course, if I put them all in the center, they're going to be all in the center position. So the sound is going to become more narrow. But when I try and spread them, that's where we get this really wide sound. Now, same thing goes for the VCO trim. Now, here I can decide how much those 6 voices are going to be detuned. So let's try it out. And you can see the voices that I play, they get highlighted. You have this little LED right here that indicates that the note is being played. Here I decide how much of a detuning each voice has. Same goes for VCO2, and we also have the VCF, so basically for the filter. With this one, you can play with it and customize the sound exactly the way you want it, and you can decide how much drift the VCOs have, because basically the VCOs are what characterizes those analog synths of the 80s, those polysynths. So then we also have the loudness envelope trim. Again, same story. We can decide how much variation every voice will have for the loudness envelope, and same for the filter, and of course the portamento trim, which of course I've already shown you. See, they don't all fall at the same time in the target note. Check it out. So let me play a few more notes so that you can hear this even more. And I'm going to go to my voice detune and exaggerate the portamento trim. So let's do this. Very thick, kind of detuned portamento sound. That's, you know it from, if you've ever been to a movie theater, you know the sound, So let's, I'm going to now just turn it down a little bit. Why don't we try and create a very, very long pad that evolves a little bit? Let's try this. Maybe I also want to add a bit of filter modulation to my LFO. And let's go for a long sound. I'm going to add the full noise generator right there. So let's try this. And you can see all those different filter envelopes arriving at a slightly different time. Of course, if I turn this down in the voice detune, this will become a little bit more normalized. So maybe I want a little bit of it. Actually, I kind of like this variation. Very, very nice. Let's try and modulate the filter with the LFO. And let's turn it into square. So you can create some really, really cool rhythmic effects using the filter modulation with the LFO. Now, before I go, I want to create a very delicate sound because, of course, RAST-A can create some really big, really lush, really huge sounding sounds, but let's try and create something a little bit more fragile. Maybe create like a nice pluck sound, up 1 octave for both oscillators. And let's see, maybe I want to have a sawtooth on oscillator number 2. Sounds so big already, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the unison. Just dial down the resonance a little bit so that it's a little bit more polite. So I'm going to go only half for the oscillator 2. So now let's turn the decay down a little bit. Maybe add a little bit of release. Maybe I want a little bit of LFO now to the oscillators. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the keyboard follow so that I get a different reaction from the filters. Let's close the sustain just a tiny bit. And last but not least, let's add some reverb. Honestly, I can sit here and create sounds all day with RAST-A. It's really, really easy to go from one sound to the other. And honestly, I didn't have anything planned. That was just tweaking with the knobs. So there you go, guys. I hope this gives you a good idea on how you can unlock the immense power of this beautiful synth. Don't forget to let us know what you'd like to see next in the comments down below, and we're looking forward to see what sounds you will create using RAST-A. Have fun, and we'll see you on the next one.